Okay.
Okay, so now we have been doing weekly webinars, but we are going to change that schedule. So now the webinars will be every third Thursday of the month, and they will be 2 hours long, and they will be from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. So the next webinar after today will be June 18th, and the topic will be to be determined. We will go off of customer needs and suggestions. So please be thinking of topics that you'd really like a webinar on to go more in depth and learn Cabinet Pro a little bit better. I'll ask again at the end of the webinar for any topic suggestions, and I will put that into the private Facebook group as a poll where you can vote on a topic that you'd like to see. So today, we're going to do price per cabinet via the cabinet editor for modular cabinets, and pricing custom cabinets via the pricing setup screen. So be thinking of those topics, and if you have any questions on those, if you have any questions as we go along, you can type them into the chat or write them down so you don't forget when Frank stops for questions. Okay. Go ahead, Frank.
Okay. Okay, hopefully, let's see now. Okay, concerning our next webinar, let me just make a couple of comments on it. As Valerie said, they're going to be 2 hours long, but once a month rather than once a week. And the last 30 minutes of that webinar, the 2 hour long monthly webinar, will be dedicated to questions on just about on the topic that we're dealing with. But if there are no questions on the topic that we're dealing with, then you can ask questions on any aspect of the software itself. And if we go over the 2 hours while we're answering questions, then that's what we do, because the whole idea is to teach more of what Cabinet Pro is capable of doing. And if it requires more than 2 hours, well, then it does. And you can leave the meeting whenever you want, or stay if it's of interest to you. So what we're going to do now is go through 2 different kinds of pricing. The first kind of pricing that I'm going to talk about is one that you'll probably never use. However, it needs to be discussed anyway, just in case, and that's for modular cabinets. Most of our customers are small to medium shops that are custom cabinet manufacturers. Modular cabinets are usually reserved for larger companies. They're usually cranked out cabinets, 3-inch increment, for example, base wall cabinets that are single section modular units. And the pricing that we have for such a cabinet or such a system of cabinets, I should say, is pricing per prototype. For example, if you look at these categories on the left-hand side and you go to accessories and pricing, some of you may never have even seen this because most of you, like I said, are custom cabinet makers. But you could put a list price for a particular prototype. Let's say a base cabinet, for example, with 1 drawer. Another prototype might be a base cabinet with no drawers. And then, so you have a price here of, let's say, $150, $125, and a price per increment could be maybe $20. Now your increment is defined at the pricing setup screens that we're going to spend a lot of time on. And so let's say your increment was 3 inches, for example, then every 3 inches past your base width, which might be, let's say, as an example, 30 inches, $20 would be added. Now, $20 is not subtracted if you go lower than your base width, because you'll be losing money that way. But anything over a particular increment gets charged whatever value you put here for that particular prototype. But this method of pricing cabinets is very rare for our customers. So unless there are any questions, let me ask real quick if there are any questions along those lines. Okay. If there are no questions along those for modular type cabinets, let's get to the custom cabinets. Excuse me. Eliana, could you bring me a bottle of water, please? All right, now what I've done here is I have a wall cabinet, a base cabinet, and a tall cabinet. 3 major types of cabinets. I was going to add a drawer bank here as well, but a drawer bank is really just a base cabinet with drawers in it rather than drawers and doors. So like you did when you first set up Cabinet Pro, we want to do the same thing as far as putting 3 different types of the 3 major categories: base, wall, and tall cabinets. Now, how each base cabinet, wall cabinet, or tall cabinet are configured, that's a different story. But if we start with the 3 basic types, then we can generate a bid for those 3 cabinets and have a pretty good idea as to whether or not our bidding system is set up according to our specifications or not. Now, in order to generate a bid, I'm going to go to reports, and we're going to use all 3. Thank you. We're going to use all 3 cabinets and click bidding reports. Now, what we're going to do here is go through the setup portion. But before I go to the setup portion, let me just say very quickly that what you're looking at is a very detailed account of where pricing is going to be coming from, and how and what different aspects of your job are being priced out and how those are being priced out. We're going to go through details in a moment. Last week, I think it was last week, we talked about smart hardware rules. Well, we still have those smart hardware rules here, or at least the results of those hardware rules, where we have shelf clips, door bumpers, and any other kind of smart hardware rule that we're dealing with. The results would be in our invoice, in our bid, in this area. Now, this bid that you are looking at can be converted to a graph by clicking graphs, the button. And now we have a bar graph which shows the entire job, but broken down into various bars. And those bars are described over on the right-hand side as a legend. So you can see where your money is being spent on a particular job. For example, whatever this aspect is, cabinets, we might be able to change how we build those cabinets, how we price them out, what kind of material we're using, what kind of markup we're using in order to reduce that. So you have in front of you a pretty good analysis of the job itself. So you can make appropriate alterations in order to increase your profit without decreasing your quality. So if I click this graph, we go to a second type of graph, which is a pie graph. This has the exact same information. We use the exact same legend. However, it is simply portrayed differently from a bar graph to a pie graph. Clicking the graph one more time, we get another type of a bar graph where the entire job you'll see is about a little over $2,700 on the left-hand side here. And each of these categories, again, refer to the legend on the right-hand side, which is the exact same legend that we've looked at so far. But the whole purpose of this is to, at a glance, look to see if you have something that's outstanding or one particular aspect of your job that's outstanding that needs attention because you're spending too much money on it. If, for example, you are spending too much money on hardware and you're including that in your bid without having the customer pay for it, which is a decision that you need to make, that would show up here very quickly. And you can think to yourself, well, should I start charging for that? Now, the beauty of Cabin Pro in these reports that you're going to be looking at is that you can actually account for every item in the job so that you don't get nickel and dime to death. It is so incredibly common, especially in cabinetry, and all of you know this already, to get nickel and dime, because after somebody accepts a job, they're going to say, well, can you add this? Oh, can you just add this a little bit? It's not that big of a deal, but can you add that? Well, to you, it is a big deal because those things add up, and pretty soon you are spending, your job is costing a lot more than what you're charging by giving freebies. But with this program, you can actually say yes to every little addition that somebody wants, and then have the program take that into consideration so that you don't get nickel and dime. Now, let's go ahead and look at the setup. But before we go into the setup, I want to know if there are any questions that you might have as of this point, or that you would like me to address as I'm going through this. I'm just pausing because I want to look at your faces to make sure you're still there, and see the great smiles. Okay, let's continue on then. On the left-hand side, we have a number of categories. These categories define various aspects of the bidding process. Now, in most cases, you do not have to choose between one kind of pricing method and another kind of pricing method. You can combine them however you want. For example, square foot charges per cabinet. Most people, or let me put it this way, many people who were bidding cabinets before computerizing your shop utilized square foot charges or lineal foot charges. That, I mean, I don't write me a whole bunch of emails on this, but is my opinion that is probably one of the worst ways of bidding, period. And the reason I say that is because of this. Let's say, for example, you have a base cabinet or wall cabinets, and you're going to charge a cost per lineal foot of whatever dollar amount, $50 a lineal foot, $80, $100, $8, whatever. What that does not take into consideration is how many doors and drawers you're making. And it doesn't matter how big the drawers are or how big the doors are, because that's just a material problem, a material change, and that's not that much. It's the labor involved in making a door or a drawer box that comes into effect. And if you have a row of cabinets that are, let's say, 8 feet long, 8 feet, that's not much of anything. How about a row of cabinets, a run of cabinets that is 20 feet long, and you have almost no doors in there and almost no drawers. But then you have another bid, another job with a run of 20 feet, lineal feet, and you have quite a few drawers, quite a few doors. Well, there's no way that that cost per lineal foot is going to be appropriate for both of those jobs. You have to continually change that cost per lineal foot in order to, and even then, you're just going to get an approximation of what that bid is going to be, should be. Now, we allow it because people still want to use it. If you want to use it, that's up to you. And if you have a system that works fine for you, then hey, great. But we also have, so you can use this in conjunction with what else there is to look at and to utilize. So if you want to use this by itself, fine. If you didn't want to use it, just put zeros in there. And if you want to use this in conjunction with others, you can fill this out and then utilize other aspects of the bidding process. So the second portion, the second category that we'll talk about is material, hardware, and markups. We have, in inventory, you will have the costs of your hardware, you'll have the cost of your material, and in the door pricing grid, you can have the cost of your doors on a per square footage basis. Well, this screen allows 5 different markups. One is for hardware only, and one is for material only. And one markup is specifically for doors. Usually you don't have a door markup unless your door grid, which we should go to right after this little presentation here. If your door grid is showing your prices for the making of a particular door, then you may in fact want a door markup. For example, let's say that you are buying your doors. Let's go to the door grid category or the screen. Here is the door pricing grid. Now, if we had a number in here, which is a square footage charge, let's say $13.55 per square foot if you ordered a cathedral door made out of birch ply. I'm not saying that this makes a whole lot of sense as far as birch ply and just the cathedral door itself, but whatever the name of the door is and whatever the material is, we have a corresponding square foot charge that most door companies utilize. So if the door company was charging you $13.55 for per square foot of a particular door, then you might want to add a markup so that you're not just ordering doors for no profit whatsoever. If this square footage charge is incorporating your profit, then you might want to have the door percent markup equal to 0, because you don't want to mark it up twice. Well, it wouldn't be a bad idea to do that, but nobody's going to pay for it. So here, whatever your square footage charge is, it depends upon what that represents in order for you to use for you to use a markup here or not. Again, in summary, if that door pricing grid, the square footage charges already incorporate your upcharge, then you probably want to put 0 here. If those prices incorporate just the pricing of your door company, then you certainly would want to put an upcharge here to add to that price. Hardware markup, that's a markup percentage that does exactly what it sounds like. It marks up whatever hardware you are adding to the job. And again, the concept is the same as what I just described. If, let's say, drawer guides, if the drawer guide charge that you have in your inventory is equal to your cost for that drawer guide, then you want to put a markup percentage here. If that drawer guide cost incorporates your profit in it already, then you can put a 0 here if you want. It depends upon how you're pricing the hardware, how you're pricing material, how you're pricing doors, whether or not you want to put a markup here or not. And notice that those markups can be different. The job specific, this markup is, again, it is specifically for a particular job. That 25% markup might be for a job that's extremely difficult, or for a customer who's extremely difficult. But whatever that percentage is, it's just for a particular job, not for any particular aspect of that job. When we say we have a 25% job specific markup, what that is doing, what that will do, is it'll figure out your entire job, how much the whole thing costs, including the various markups that you've got, and then add an additional, in this case, 25%. That's a lot, but you may not want that much, but you can put that anywhere you want. And on top of that, all these markups can be either positive or negative. If they're positive, the price is marked up. If it's negative, the price for that particular category is marked down. Is there a question? Okay. Now the setup specific. This also is in addition, similar to the job specific markup, it's in addition to these hardware, material, and door markups. Because some of your setups, just because of the way that you're building cabinets in general, the pricing should be more expensive than a different setup. Now, the profit. This profit is a number that actually, when you put a number in here, like I've got 20% right now, if you put a number in here, what the program does is it sets all markups, all profit, all everything that would be added to the job in order to give you a markup or a profit of any sort, it sets it all equal to 0. And then it calculates the job cost, the cost of the job itself, because profit, remember, is the amount of money that you charge that is over and above, beyond what the job cost to be produced. And so in order to legitimately obtain a real profit number, what we have to do is we have to know what the job costs in the first place without any profit, without any markups, 10, 15, 25, 50% markups. Those all have to be set to 0 first. So what the program does, when you say, I want a 20% markup, it sets everything equal to 0 and then calculates the job cost. Once it knows the job cost, it then works backwards in order to get you a 20% profit margin from that amount. So if we were to display profit, I'm going to put a check in that box that says display the profit. And now I'm going to hit the OK button. At the bottom of this screen, you'll see total price is $3,400. The job cost itself is $2,724. The profit is $681, which represents 20% profit over the job cost. Now, that's not multiplying that by 1.2, because if you work backwards, you'll find that 1.2 comes out to be something like 0.91%, I think it is. So what the program's doing is find out what the job cost is, and then adding 20% of that number to 2724. So now notice this. I have my job description here, and let's say, for example, you wanted to give a cost breakdown to your customer, which in most cases is not a good idea, because people are funny. They will argue with you. They'll be happy with your total price, but then they're going to argue with you about this particular aspect of your pricing, but they'll be happy with this part. So if they're happy with the total price and you give them a breakdown like what we're showing here, it's almost guaranteed that you'll get a complaint. So it's not a good idea to do that. However, if I were to send this to a PDF file, or if I was to print it out, the program recognizes that I have my profit showing here, and it's going to say, excuse me, you are currently showing profit on this report. Do you really want to do this? And now you can make a decision as to whether or not you do or don't. So if I cancel it, I can go back into setup and then turn off the profit and then show it. And then print it out as a PDF file. Now that is true, that profit will be shown on just about any report that you have. So even if you come over, I'm going to put that back on for just a moment, and come over to general display options. And let's say I just want the price only. I want to cancel out all the specifics and just show the price. Now if I hit OK, notice we're still getting the job cost, we're still getting the profit, we're still getting 20% profit. Now, everybody knows that you're in business to make profit, but you still don't want to show exactly what profit you're making. It just is not appropriate, period. So generally, we turn that off. So we go back to the setup, and if you try to print a report, any report, even if it's just a price only, you'll get that message that says, you're showing profit. Do you really want to do this? So here, I'm just going to turn that off. Now, going back to, let's take each one of these individually. We're on material, hardware, and markups. We already talked about the percentage markups and the profit, but even though you have a percentage for hardware markup, you may not want to use it for cabinet hardware. So the question is, even if you have this showing, if you have this unchecked, then it's not going to use that 10% or whatever number you have there in order to mark up your cabinet hardware, unless you have this checked. Same thing is true for material totals and material markup. You could have material totals without it being marked up at all. And if you have this checked, then it's going to take your materials that you're using and apply that markup to it. So where does that come about? If I hit the OK button, well, we don't have anything here. Let me show all information. Display all items. See, for an actual bid, you may want to just display the total price only and forget that, and forget subtotals, just the total price for a bid. Hit the OK button, and now you have just the bid. The positive thing about this, there's a number of positive things about this. Number one, you give the total amount that a customer of yours would be paying, and you don't have details, and they can't argue with this detail or that detail. It's just, here's the price, you like it, yes or no. The other major reason for just the total price by itself is so they can't take your breakdown and take it to another cabinet shop and say, well, can you beat this price? Here's what they're doing on a per item basis. Can you beat it? that's a little bit more difficult, a lot more difficult to do if you have just a price. So a customer, for giving a customer a price by itself is usually preferred. Now, getting back to the setup, if we go back to hardware, we have all these, and these are just, these areas up here are just telling the program what we're applying. Are we applying the general markup to, and the setup specific markup to accessories, to charges of the cabinet, user-defined charges? We have user-defined charges that we're going to get to momentarily. When pricing panels, determine the panels used. Option 1, from the actual square footage, from the number of full panels required. This is the fastest way, by the way. Option 2, and is almost always correct. Not quite, but pretty close. This one is slower, but it's from the number of full and partial panels required as reported by the panel optimization report, including remnants used, and this by far is the most accurate option, but it's also slower. This one is preferred by many, either option 2 or option 1. Now, excuse me, either option 2 or option 3. Option 1 is not, even though we allow it, there are some cabinet people who want to use it, but it's not very often used because you don't charge something based upon actual square footage in general, because you still have to demolish use an entire panel, or at least a portion of that panel is going to be waste material. So if you use option 1, then you are negating the waste of the entire panel that you have to buy in the first place. Option 2 and option 3 both incorporate the waste from those panels. Taxes and job information. All right, now we have sales tax that differs per county or per city. Percent discount. If that number is positive, then you are giving a positive discount to someone. 10%, $100 or $1,000 job, it's now $900 with a 10% discount. If you put, and by the way, if we put a 10% discount in there and I hit the OK button, there is a setup portion. In fact, let's just find it on display. We can display all categories or discount. Display the tax, discount, and total price. So now we're going to see that here's our discount, because you want somebody to know that they're getting a discount. And here's the total price. But what if this is a very difficult customer or a very difficult job, and just for this one job, you want to increase it a little bit because he's a pain in the neck? This has often been used as a pain in the neck percentage. So if we go back to taxes and we make this a negative 10%, and now we hit the OK button, notice there's no 10% showing here. However, it will increase all the different aspects of the job itself by 10% without the individual knowing, without it being displayed. All right, going back to taxes, user-defined taxes. This is generally for Canada because they have all kinds of taxes. We're possibly following suit here in this country, but for right now, we're not. Price per square foot per square unit discount over here. If you have a square footage charge of on your door pricing grid, sometimes you might want to give the door grid a discount itself, and this is where you do that. Most people, most cabinet makers will not touch this. This particular part is usually done at door companies or by door companies. Now, percent overhead, you can put your own percentage of overhead in that is utilized at your shop. Percent deposit. If I put 50% down, 50% due whenever, if I hit the OK button, now here's a 50% deposit of the total price. And here's the balance. And you can also put specific items in there. This right here is user-defined, $500 to be retained until 30 days after completion. That is a part of the setup, which is right here. And you can put anything you want in there, or you can put nothing in there if you want. Received in good condition, again, that's user-defined. The word signature itself is user-defined. That's under general display options. Going back to taxes and job information, these taxes involve, let's see, Canada has a tax, it's a federal income tax, which is what has been proposed in this country as well. But that is a user-defined tax because you can give the percentage and the name of the tax itself. So we have a few of them. These are, I think, pretty self-explanatory. But notice down here, we have record 1 of 1. Just about every one of these categories can have several different records. So you can have 20 different taxes if you wanted, because this is only in record number 1. If you add another record, now right here with this little plus sign, now we have 2 records. You could add twice as much information as you had in the first place. I'm going to delete that. Now, we have door and drawer options. Again, it would be good for you to look at these options, because a lot of times we'll get a technical support question that says, you know what, I have my door grid set up, filled out, but I'm not getting any bid on it. It's because this part is not checked. Notice it says use the door pricing grid for pricing doors by the square footage. Now, why do we have this checked if we have a door grid? Because you might think that if we have a door grid, it's automatically going to be pricing by that grid. Well, no. And the reason the answer to that is no is because some of your pricing bids, your pricing methods can use the door pricing grid, and others don't have to. Because, here, let me exit out of here and refresh that screen. Because what you're looking at, this entire setup, all these different categories with all these various options, including user-defined charges, by the way, all these different options can be saved as one particular bidding operation, bidding method, pricing method. Maybe you have one method for contractors, another method for residential homeowners, another method for offices or commercial work. So you can have several different methods of pricing. And on top of that, let's say on the residential, You have 3 different methods of pricing, and you go through each one of these categories and change your pricing method for to be printed out for every single time you bid a job to a residential potential customer. Now you're giving that particular potential customer not 1 bid, but 3 bids: good, better, and best. It's kind of like Sears: good, better, and best. And one could be relatively low, one could be relatively expensive, and one could be in the middle. So you can have 3 different bids. Those are saved right down here. And you name it, you set up a bid. Once you like it, according to what it's going to be used for, you name it and save it. Now, when you give those 3 bids to a residential customer, you're giving them not just a bid, but also right here an explanation as to what that bid consists of, so that they can compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, rather than not when comparing your bid to somebody else. If you were making, as an example, let's say you were making staple drawers, some really cheap drawers that you want to just staple together, which I know none of you do. That could be one of your cheaper bids. Your more expensive bid could be dovetail drawers. Now that's an exaggeration, of course, but you get the idea. One could be a lower method of building, but not so low to make you look like a poor cabinet maker. But you can take a number of things into consideration and change your bidding so that you leave it to the homeowner to choose which one he wants: your high bid, your low bid, or your medium bid. Most people will go with the medium bid. But the beauty of it is that your profit stays the same. And ideally, with a lower bid, that job will produce a lower profit, same percentage, but lower profit, but it will get out quicker because it's easier to make. So you go through those kinds of categories, or excuse me, those kinds of considerations when making a particular bid setup. So going back to our taxes and job, we're already finished with that. Door and drawer options. Again, when do we want to apply a finishing charge? Do we want to apply it to doors, drawer fronts, decorative finished ends, standard finished ends, or decorative finished ends? You can select which, if any, you want to apply your finishing charges to. User-defined charges. You can have as many of these as you want by simply adding records. User-defined charges in general, we have taxable charges and non-taxable charges. Each charge can be a % markup and named, and or, notice I'm saying and or, not just or, but and or, it could be a simple flat charge with a particular name. It could also be cost per unit, number of units, name of this charge. And again, there's some help here to let you know what those units refer to. Anything such as lineal feet, square feet, screws, lights, corbels, or any other item that you may designate what the unit is when naming this charge. So this is a catch-all for those things that we may not have included in in the normal use of the program. These are taxable items. These are non-taxable items down here, same kind of concept. General display options, we've already been here, but this shows basically what we want to display for this particular report and what we don't want to display. Notice you can turn one of these into a packing list by simply saying, do not display any prices, period. So I want everything is showing. Well, not that. Let me, whoops. If I go to display, I want to display all items, say, but I don't want to show any prices. If I hit OK now I have basically a very serious packing list, tells me which numbers are going to be, which items are going to be added and which ones are not, which is a part of that job. Notice we have pricing here because that is a separate area of the door list. If we go to setup, we have hide show bidding categories right here. So we can turn off different aspects of the, we have billable square foot, but we don't want to do the price. We don't want to display the price. This is for the doors. And now when I hit OK, we'll have billable square feet and square foot per door, but no price. Now, what's the difference between square foot per door and billable square feet per door? Notice these are the same. In fact, they're all the same. Let's go back to the door library for a moment. If we go to the door library and we choose a particular door style, we might have a style upcharge per door, we have a labor upcharge per door, but we also have a minimum square footage per door. So we might want to put in here that this door, we want to charge a minimum amount for this door, no matter how small the door happens to be. So let's say I put 4 square feet in there. 4 square, that's kind of big. How about 2 square feet? So what I'm telling the program right now is that I want to, no matter how big that door is, I want to at least charge for 2 square feet. So if it's under 2 square feet, that's going to be the actual square footage, but the billable square footage is going to be at least 2. So which door were we using? I think Cathedral, weren't we? So I'm going to put 2 there, just for the heck of it. And now I'm going to redo that job. Reports, bidding options, and now, excuse me. Well, let's see, 17 by 22, 1 by, oh, these are all over 2 square feet. See right here, 2.73 square feet, and I don't have anything that's under 2 square feet. So I'm going to go back to that cabinet, that door, Cathedral door, and I'm going to change the minimum square footage to 3, and we should see the billable square footage change right here. Let's see if that works. So we go back to the door library, back to Cathedral, change this to 3 square feet. That's the minimum amount I want to charge for. Hit the OK button, reprocess the bid, and now we have 3 right here. Even though the square foot per door is 2.73, my minimum square footage that I want to charge for is 3. Now, customers will never understand why you're doing that, but you do. So the best thing to do is just not even show this unless it's for yourself. Most of the time, this kind of detail is just for yourself, not for a customer. And with a customer, you would have a different setup. Let's do that. If I go to setup, I'm going to save what I've done here so far as a job analysis. Excuse me, for residential. and I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to change it a bit, because on the display, on the general display, I don't want to show too much of anything, perhaps of each cabinet. Subtotal of all items, we could do that if we want. Or on the, you know what, I'm going to leave this the way it was. We're going to show hide show bidding categories. What is this? Doors. Okay, on the door list, I'm not going to display the actual square footage, but I am going to display the billable square footage, because this customer wants to know what the square footage is that I'm charging them for. But if I put this actual square footage down, we're going to get into an argument of some sort. We don't want that. So it's just hit OK. Now the billable square feet is just 3, and nobody knows what the actual square foot is, unless, of course, you multiply these out. And if they do multiply it out, you just say this is the minimum charge. It's just that simple. And if you have to explain it, well, you have to, but in most cases, you probably won't have to do that. Oops. Going back to the bidding portion, the bidding report. If I go to setup again and look up user-defined prices. Okay, we have, we've covered up to that, up to general display options. And before I go on, are there any questions?
Can you refresh?
What's that?
I'm not quite sure I'm following the record one of, why would you want to have more than one record?
Most people don't, Thomas. Most people don't. But you can get, but some people get really complicated on this, and you can get very, 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 very detailed. As an example, this whole record could be considered installation charges, and you can set up one entire record just for installation. You set up another record to increase, let's say you have a number of user-defined charges that aren't part of the program. So you're making a number of user-defined charges. Well, you have the option of making 10 or 15 records to have 10 or 15 different user-defined charges. Because in each record, you can set everything else equal to nothing except the taxable charges or the user-defined charges. Thomas, does that answer your question?
Yes, and then where do you locate that record? At this screen, or will it come up somewhere else?
Oh, right here. You just add a record right here, and it'll come right here on this one screen. So here, for example, if I have a percent upcharge of 4% for electrical overhead. That's probably small. 4% for electrical overhead. And I want to add a record. I can have 12% for installation of base units. I know that's misspelled, but whatever. Now I can go back to record number 1 and record number 2 and have 2 totally different kinds of taxable charges. Okay? And you can describe the nature of that charge up here. But you're not going to learn everything there is to learn about this in this 1 hour or 45 minutes, whatever it is. You need to play with this. You need to experiment with it. And then once you change something, hit the OK button, and see what the effect is, and then go back and change something else. So for the most part, it is going to require some, just like anything else, some experimentation. Hide show bidding categories. What are we doing? How are we doing on time? Okay, we have just a couple minutes left. Hide show bidding categories. What this does is this allows us to do just that. Hide or display different categories that are within that pricing bid that we just looked at. And once you put a check on one of these boxes or take a check off, and then you inspect the price right here, the bid, you'll see where that's coming from or where it's referring to. Report options. Do you want to consolidate identical cabinets? Do you want to consolidate identical hardware? So there's just a few different options for that report. If we're using inches or millimeters in our dimensions, regardless as to what you're utilizing in the program itself, in other aspects of the program, CNC, optimization, cut listing, general design, you can select millimeters or inches just for this particular area as well. Methods of pricing doors and drawers. Most people use this one. Doors will be manufactured or purchased by the square foot plus style upcharge. Where does the style upcharge come from? We already looked at that. In the door library, for every specific door style, we have a labor charge and a style upcharge. Now, these two are actually added together to give you one big charge, but they're separated here so that you know what you're separating from between labor and just the making of that style, period. Because a style upcharge means that making this particular door is going to be more expensive than making just a flat raised panel door or even just a slab door. Sometimes that charge is incorporated into the square footage charge on the table that we looked at a little while ago, but most times it's not. Most door companies put a style upcharge in addition to the square foot charge for a particular door style and material cross-reference. So going back into the bid, notice in order to set this up, I'm actually making 3 different cabinets and producing a bid and then setting up from there. And finally, exporting. This is done on a per company basis. Currency, you can change the currency. Well, you're not going to do that, so we won't even talk about this. This is for countries in Asia or Vietnam, or that's Asia, or Europe or someplace. The British use this because they use pounds. And the Europeans would use this because they use euros. But the default is dollars, and the default is using a decimal. Any questions on what we've done so far? All right, remember, Valerie, well, our next meeting will be on the third Thursday of the next month. And Valerie, you want to take it from here?
Yep. Okay. All right. So does anyone have any topic suggestions for that that next webinar that's in a month.
I've got a question for you, Val.
Sure.
On the recordings that you're doing, is it possible to download those to our hard drive to take with us if we go somewhere, with our computer?
You can access the recorded webinars on the website, and the website is